Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from in the world. We're coming to you from Toronto, Canada, on this Sunday morning. And my name is RJ Horner, and I'm the host here of Open Up. I'm also the vice president of Voice of Men 360 and the host of my own programming as facilitator for Live and Love Life. Let me share a brief introduction about Voice of Men 360 and International Men's Day and why these things matter to us and why Open Up is our topic for this program. Voice of Men 360 is a not for profit organization founded in 2020 in Toronto, Canada. Boys and men are seeking help and support in many areas in their lives. We understand the demands and support needed when it comes to boys and men in our society. Voice of Men 360 was born out of seeing a tremendous need and stepping up to help provide services to help support and overcome men's and boys' life challenges. We're part of an International Men's Day. And International Men's Day has been serving for over 21 years so far and has been adapted in 90 countries around the world, which join together and do various activities. IMD follows 6 pillars, which is the overall well-being of boys and men, and we follow in those same footsteps. And why does Open Up matter? Because we men do not open our hearts and we're not willing to share what matters to us most. When we keep our emotional challenges within inside for a long period of time, at some point it's bound to explode and affect not only our health conditions, but emotions and our environment around us. That's why we want to create an open space and allow individuals to share their journey through our platform. We aim to create awareness about the life challenges, struggles, overcomings of and ups and downs that our boys and men go through in their lives. There are no limitations with gender, age, nationality, or age, ethnic groups. We invite everybody to share their life journey. All walks of life can participate. Our goal is to have a positive impact on someone's life through this program. Open Up is live on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Each week, we'll bring an individual and share their life experiences with you. I'm looking forward to this one today because our next guest certainly knows about overcoming challenges. In fact, he had to overcome a lot in life, having no arms to deal with. In fact, he's quoted as the best thing that ever happened to me is being born without arms. It brought me to circumstances never thought possible. Welcome, Alvin Law, to Open Up. Thank you for joining us on Sunday morning and being willing to share your life journey with us.
Thanks, RJ. And it is early Sunday morning. I'm in Calgary, so it's just after 8. And I'm not a morning person, so I'm going to pretend, okay?
The sun is shining. It's a bright new day.
Well,
Welcome.
it's also a beautiful day. I think that's the bottom line is how we get up, how we see our world, especially since a year ago. I think we're really starting to understand that the world has a lot more that unites us than divides us. That's not a political statement. That's just a reality that I've seen. And this project in particular, I am very excited to be part of because indeed, I was born without arms. I'm one of those, maybe you heard of this, the thalidomide babies, the babies that were born missing limbs or even just fingers or toes or all 4 limbs because of a morning sickness medication that was prevalent from 1959 to 1963. I was born in 1960. But not only that, by the time I was 5 days old, I was also homeless. And my birth family did not die. They weren't homeless people, but I was left in the hospital basically because they saw no quality of life or future. Now, that sounds like a made for television movie, doesn't it? But this is real life. I'm coming to you from my living room in Calgary, and I'm not sure if you can see over my shoulder, but that's an older picture of my family. So whatever they said I'd never be able to do, apparently they were wrong. But I take not all the credit, some of it, but I was just raised right. And that's what I'd love to talk to you about today.
Oh, absolutely wonderful. I love your story. You have a tremendous spirit for somebody who's, again, overcoming difficulties in your life. That is a beautiful picture of you and your family there. So, you know what? I can see that you've overcome, you've achieved, you've lived a life, right? So, thank you for joining us and opening up today. But let's go back to, I mean, as far as we can, anyways, what was it like for you? I mean, life is a challenge for most people. What's it like being born with no arms and not being able to do things that everybody else can do?
So, the new expression during COVID, we've all gotten to hear it. I've gotten sick of it the second day I heard it. They're calling it the new normal. And I don't want to get all philosophical and everything, but I was born without arms. That's my normal. You are your normal. Sivam, who invited me to this show, it's his normal. We all have our lives, and they're all our normal lives. What we learn through our lives is some days are good days, some days are bad days. People think it must have been terrible growing up without arms. It was absolutely not terrible. But that's the key to my story. Is I mentioned already that I was given up, but I was taken in. In fact, I've always kind of accepted the fact that my birth family would not want me, seriously, without being, humorous about this. Who'd want a baby without arms on purpose? Really? And that made the difference because I was adopted. Now, I wasn't adopted by a family looking for a child. I was actually taken into a foster home, and eventually it became my forever home. But it was in that home that I learned that this is life. This is who you are, Alvin. This is how you were born. My mom was 55 years old when I was a newborn. My dad was 53. That was a significant player in the culture that I grew up in. But I think the biggest player in what I grew up in was small town Saskatchewan. I was raised in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, a little farming community. And you know that expression, it takes a village to raise a child? It's true. At least it was in my case. So the biggest thing in my life that was most important was I celebrated my life. I didn't mourn what I didn't have.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Because I mean, yeah, so many us and little challenges, but so many of us get hung up on those things that bring us, down in one level or another. But I mean, again, everybody has, what is their normal and how do you look at it? I guess changes the way you respond to it, right? So,
Absolutely.
and then so childhood. I mean, you said it first of all. It takes a village to raise a child, so you had a good influences there. But schooling, things like that. What was childhood like for you?
So I think these are the stories that have defined who I am, RJ. And I realize, and I want to say this before I go any further. I understand that there are struggles out there, and I don't want to sugarcoat that I didn't have any struggles. All right, I'm going to jump ahead to a poignant picture for all of your audience that is watching or listening. My mother had to take me to the washroom till I was 16 years old, and I'm going to be really graphic. I apologize, including wiping my butt till I was 16 years old. So there were some things that were not pleasant having no arms. I had to learn to use my feet. They became my hands. You can see these are what I function with. It's going to be a little bit less audio, but I'm going to reach up and show you. I can grab a cup of coffee with my foot and I can hold it. That didn't happen the first time I tried. I failed a million times. I'm exaggerating, but that was the whole point. But the problem wasn't me and the physicality. My feet became my hands. The problem was the stigma and the ignorance and naivety of the time. And I don't mean that to be derogatory. But for example, in 1966, even in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, disabled children did not go to public school. It's the way it was. Now, if I sound a little bit angry about it, I'm not actually, but it's an aggressive stance. Why would they not allow kids to go to school? Well, hey, you know what? We used to segregate black and white people. We don't anymore. We used to segregate disabled people. We don't anymore. We learned and we grew. And I think that's what is great about a show like this is we need to learn and grow. My parents were not advocate types. They weren't complainers. But the irony was there was a school right across the street from our house in Little Yorkton. Why wouldn't I go there? Because nobody had ever done it. Well, that's why they call it a first. So I got to go to school there. My parents simply had conversations with the school. But in fact, the school had to kind of do something they'd never done before either. What's really interesting is, and this is the key to this story, it wasn't as much what school did for me, because I was pretty smart. It's what I did for the climate of school. Can you imagine that? It changed the school. There was all of a sudden a kid with no arms in the building, and it went 99% great. Not 100%, because every now and then you get a 1%. Was I bullied? Yeah, 1%. Was I picked on? Yeah, 1%. But 99% of the kids accepted me, acknowledged me, and quite frankly, I became a fabric of our community, and that was huge.
Oh, absolutely. You definitely seem a person. I mean, you had to learn how to adapt. So you seem like your personality adapts as you go along. And so you seem like you had a decent enough childhood. And I like the fact that your school brought the awareness, or your attendance at school brought the awareness to a whole nother level. You're exactly right. That's what this show is all about. And I hope people get to listen to our show today, as many as possible. So you seem like a very educated man. You're a smart man. I listened to you. You're very well delivered. So what was your education like, if you wouldn't mind, if bringing it into that?
Well, first of all, the primary education all the way through secondary was, again, absolutely normal. I did get a post secondary education, but in fact, that's another key part to my story. Not to jump right into this, but I always love to share my favorite story. School issued itself a challenge to me to be as good as I can, to get good marks, and frankly, to play the game. I believe that education's a game in many respects, and I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. Whether we like it or not, our education is the foundation of what people see in our knowledge. And we can learn nowadays on the internet. I mean, boy, kids have learned that one this past year, huh? But the fact of the matter is, we must learn to interact with each other. And to
Mhm.
me, that is what made me so intellectual. I was always interacting with people, answering their questions, telling my story. You know, a lot of people say, when did you become a professional speaker? Because that's what I do for a living. And I say, well, I'm not sure if I became a professional at any point in time that I can point at, but I've been a speaker since I was 3 years old, because my mom would hear people say, what happened to your little boy? And mom would say, talk to him. He's not an idiot. Make him talk. So I have been communicating with people my entire life, and that made me smart, because I was able to learn to use my voice rather than aggression to be able to get my way. But what really changed everything was the fact that I got into music. I couldn't play sports. I know it might sound like an old joke, and it is. I couldn't play soccer, even though I had the benefit of never getting the penalty of touching the ball with my hands, or as most of the world would call it, football. But I didn't want to play sports. I love watching sports. But I chose music. First singing, then tap dancing, and then I wanted to play the piano. So I tried to get lessons. And a lady in town who was not mean, but she was honest, took one look at these feet and said, you'll never play the piano. Look how short your toes are. Well, that's big feet, isn't it? You'll never play the piano. So I accepted that because she was the expert. But something in my life said, everybody that sees me is probably going to think of can't versus can. And again, pardon the cliche, but in our home, the expression was there's no such word as can't. So you simply moved on to the next project. I was able to get to be in the band because an amazing man, his name was Blaine McClary, mounted a trombone on the side of a wooden chair. I'm just going to slide back a little bit. That I played with my foot like this, moving the slide. I got into band. And because I got into band, I got into jazz. And because I got into jazz, I started going to jazz camp every summer. Jazz camp. There I started meeting musicians. And I like to say the mantra for a musician is, doesn't matter what you look like, can you play? Well, the answer is yes, I can. And from there, I started jamming with musicians. I started playing the drums. I actually play the piano today as well, because I came back to it. But here's the point. I didn't want to go to college for law, or I wasn't going to be a doctor. I often joke I couldn't have been a dentist. Can you imagine? Open wider. So I went into broadcasting. That's the extent of my education. I have a broadcasting diploma. But even more importantly, I learned the art of professional communication. That would eventually lead to me to be a speaker. But the reality is, I think we need to, and especially boys, if you're watching this, learn to play the game. Get an education. Get the best marks you can. Because honest to God, at the end of the day, you will be judged not by how shiny your stuff is, but how much you appreciate it.
Absolutely. You have lots of wisdom to give. Thank you so much for being here today. I love your personality. You're very open, and thank you for being on our show, because again, you're very open about your circumstance, and I think people are going to benefit from hearing from you today. And so you mentioned, your jazz, and music is certainly something that opens people's hearts, right? So it definitely gave you an advantage there. But I mean, talk about maybe some of the male influences you had during these times, if you could. You know what I mean? Some of the relationships you picked up, that sort of thing.
You bet. And that's exactly why I wanted to accept the invitation to be here today, because I'm going to do something, if you don't mind. I'm gonna fade out a little bit here. I'm going to stand up, It's getting a little dimmer for my mic. I understand that. But I want the audience to see the body. Okay? I want you to look at this. This is my body. The biggest problem for me and men is we don't necessarily like our bodies. And then we see the men, on TV or on the internet, the men that have the chiseled bodies and the big, beautiful hair. That doesn't define who we are as men. But here's the irony. I grew up with a real man. And I say that, with a real man, because that's what he was. My father, and I'm going to use old English measurements, my father was 6 feet 3 inches tall. He was 235 pounds. He was a blue-collar worker. He wore overalls to his job. He was a mechanic for 57 years. My father was also a service manager for a farm implement dealership. Why that was important was my father was responsible for making farmers happy. Now, if you know a farmer, no disrespect, that's a hard thing. And Dad had a mindset of, yes, we can. I know that sounds, again, like you hear that coming from a speaker. It was always, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can fix that. My dad never, ever used the word, sorry, there's nothing we can do. Imagine how that translated into the mindset of me. But my father was also an ex-professional heavyweight boxer. So he was a big, imposing man. This is going to sound funny, okay? You ready? My dad had to drop his masculinity index, that's what I call it, to deal with me. Okay, I have two brothers. They're older brothers. Remember, I was raised in a foster home and eventually a forever home. So my brothers were already raised by the time I came along. I have an 88-year-old brother, seriously. And the fact of the matter is, they often complained to me when we would get together saying I got a much better version of my father. More refined, more laid back, more accepting. And I acknowledge that. But the reality was we grew together. And I learned that being a man isn't just about the physicality of being like a boxer, but standing up for what you believe in, being accountable for your actions and agreements with people. I watched my father have relationships with other men, largely, because this was a farming community, right? Let's just be honest about that. In fact, you know what? When my father died in 2001, there was over 900 people at his funeral in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, standing room only. Why? Well, because that's the respect my father had in that town. When you live in a home with a man who gets respect, you pay attention. But here's the key, and I'm going to get really open now because this is called Open Up. I never saw my father hurt my mother, ever, not once. I saw him raise his voice to her on a few occasions, but it was more in the heat of the moment. I didn't see violence. And I'm going to throw this idea at your audience. You all mostly have hands. Here's the question, and I want you to carry this with you in the future. Do you use your hands to create or to break? My father used his hands to fix machinery, to create things. But more than anything, he didn't use his hands to hurt. Boxing was a sport. When you don't have hands, imagine what that must feel like, to see that and realize you don't need hands to be a man. In fact, to be quite blunt, I think that's the trouble, is so many men think they can submit to the opposition, pound the crap out of the people they don't like. But when you do it to women, that's just wrong.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Thank you for that message. Absolutely. These are just things that I want people to hear in this community. I'm so glad for this program. I'm so glad you had an opportunity to be on it. There are two more things I would love to ask you before we're done today. First is, again, you've talked about you have a great influence with your father, so you had a great male influence in your life. But okay, you have older brothers. What were your male influences growing up as you're becoming a young adult? Other than your father, maybe.
Okay, and that's a great question too. There's a line that is not original, but I've been using it for a really long time as a speaker. You become who you spend time with. You've heard that one, right? You become
Sure.
who you spend time with. I think the key, and that's why I brought up the music story. My friends were musicians. They were creative, artsy, laid back. And remember, this was the 70s. So we were still into peace, love, right? This was the hippie era. I had friends who simply just loved being who they were. Okay. And then I went to broadcasting school. And you would have thought that maybe that would be full of a bunch of plastic people, because this was late 70s when broadcasters were less about journalism and more about image. But when I went to college, I moved to Calgary, Alberta. And I want your audience to picture this. This is very important. That was a great question, RJ. I moved away from my home and the security of living with my parents. At 16 years old, I was tired of my mom wiping my butt, so I figured that one out. But I still needed help with my pants. Imagine it. I couldn't do and undo my pants. Now, what I'm wearing today, don't really want to show you because it would take too long. These are elasticized pants. So I learned how to be able to use my legs almost like a yoga dance to dress myself. But I still needed help in those days because I hadn't figured that one out yet. Needed help with buttons, needed help with zippers. Go to college, what do? I need guys to help me. Can you imagine the litmus test of a stranger sometimes? Hey, buddy, can you help me go to the bathroom? That ingratiates you or connects you with either really good guys or guys you don't want to hang out with. That's how lucky I was. It was like a natural filter. If a guy was willing to be my friend, excuse me, that came with the territory. And to be honest with you, it was a great thing. Excuse me, I hung out with decent, positive, caring men. But this was the key, and I really am going to be really blunt now. Too many young men do not see the value in their own lives. So they'll hang out with anybody, right? They'll get into drugs. They'll get into booze. They'll get into smoking. And I'm not trying to lecture here, all right? But the reality is you should never be so desperate that you'll join a group that will be desperate at the same time. You got to raise your bar, not lower it. But this all comes down to one word: insecurity. Mm-hmm. Where's yours come from? Because we do have it. And the other word connected to insecurity, you've probably talked about this on the show, ego. I was able to learn the art of both, right? Managing my ego and building my security, literally by having no arms. You grow with strength, or you just stay home and hide.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then, so one thing, I see that beautiful family behind you. So tell me, before that came about, how did that come about? You know what I mean? What was dating like for you? How did, you know, how did,
I didn't date. I tried. I wanted to. I'm a heterosexual, so of course I wanted to go out with women. Mm-hmm. But of course, you know, I always like to use the graphic here. And again, pardon the feet in the camera. Would you want to hold this if you were a woman? I mean, honestly, that I acknowledged. I would go out on a date or two, but it would never last. And this is actually RJ going to get, again, real honest. I got so lonely in my mid-20s that I decided to get into a relationship I should not have gotten into. And it produced a child that was not planned. In fact, we were thinking of splitting up, and then she got pregnant. Well, we were both Christians, so we both decided to do the right thing. We got married. It was a terrible reason to get married. But at the end of the day, that marriage did not last because it wasn't built on all of those foundational elements you love to talk about on this show. It ended in divorce 2 years later. But here, I hope this isn't inappropriate because it's called Open Up. I was actually one of those people that can say, me too. You know, the Me Too movement, women being abused by men. Unfortunately, it goes the other way too. It's a very small percentage, but some men are abused by women. That was me. I was with an abusive woman. She had her own mental health challenges that were pounded out like 10 times worse by pregnancy and then postpartum depression. I actually ended up raising that little boy almost exclusively by myself from the time that he was 3. He's 35 now. He's got his own issues because his mother was terrible. That's another reality. But that beautiful woman you see in the picture behind me, and I'm sorry you can't get a closer look, was the woman I met in 1991 as a single dad. And I'd learned that relationships were more than just about, you know, the physical stuff. In fact, that's the trouble, is we mistake the physical stuff, the intimacy, for a relationship. We should be looking for somebody we can talk with, share with. I know this is so corny, but be your soulmate. Absolutely. That woman, Darlene, was actually married to a police officer when we met. They were getting divorced. She didn't join me because she left him, but she saw the difference between the masculinity of a well meaning cop, and here's the key, who never grew a day in his life after their marriage. See, life should be about constant growth. And I'm willing to do that because that's what I've always done. So we got married in 1993 and we're still together, even through COVID. And by the way, my wife, I find her very attractive. Why does she find me attractive? Hey guys, it's not the biceps. You said it, RJ. There's an energy. I told you, I'm pretending, but I'm not pretending in the sense I'm faking this. It's early in the morning. But this, you can tell, is me. This is the energy I put out. You ever get around someone, you're around it for 30 seconds, it was 25 seconds too long? Well, don't marry that person. Just a tip. My wife and I are soulmates, and we have nothing but great days together.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that. Absolutely. You know what? My wife and I were best friends, right? So my wife is my best friend. I tell everything to her. When something goes on, she's the first person I want to tell about. So truly appreciated there. And I appreciate you telling about your story, bringing up your son, because again, you know what? It shows the type of man you are. It shows the type of character you've been built with. So, um, as we sign off on our show, could you perhaps maybe give some advice for our young boys and men out there who are, looking to change, looking to grow? What are some steps that they can take or some advice that you could leave them with?
Well, first of all, that's a great question, RJ, and a great way to wrap this conversation up. One of the tests that I give young men, and young people in general, but young men, do you volunteer? I mean, it's changed because now with COVID, it's hard to get out. But the volunteer mindset becomes a giving mindset. We must learn, young men, to be givers, not takers, right? Help an older woman open a door or carry her groceries. Help somebody do something. Pick up garbage and put it in the trash. All these things that we think are not important, right? They're huge. We must develop an attitude of being a caring human being. And the key to this is never, ever making the primary objective what's in it for me. Now, I know that sounds funny. You may think, oh, you're one of those boomers, eh? No, I'm not a boomer. I am old. But I've learned gratitude. You must learn gratitude. Is your family perfect? Probably not. Are you perfect? Probably not. Because guess what? Newsflash, there is no perfect. But there is the effort to get to the best you can be. And whether that's be the best student, be the best hockey player, be the best poet, be the best cook, but also that last word is intentional. Don't follow the stereotype. If you want to be a dancer, if you want to be a poet, I mean, whatever it is that makes you feel good inside. But here's the other part. You got to do the bad stuff too, right? The chores. Keep your room clean. Make your bed every day. Keep your locker at school clean if you're going to school, right? Help out around the house. Do chores without being asked. These all sound like really old-fashioned ideas, but the reality is they gain your own accountability for your behavior. And by the way, you will have fun as long as you learn to be comfortable in your skin and spend time with good people. It's really that simple.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Again, you've given everybody so much advice today. I was waiting to hear your story. I'm glad you delivered it because again, your spirit and your energy is again, it sets a bar for people to aspire to. So thank you for joining us. Alvin, thank you for joining us and sharing your life journey with us on Sunday morning.
My pleasure, RJ. And remember, always be the best you.
Absolutely. And when people like yourself come forward and share their life experiences on platforms and social media like ours, it'll give hope to someone out there to change their mindset and to change their life in a positive direction. So that's our show for today. That's our goal here is in Voice of Men 360 is we need to bring an individual and allow them to share their life journey and have an open conversation about men's problems and challenges and how we can help them. We have 4 shows live weekly. We have the one you just participated in today, which is called Open Up. That's a live talk show every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We have a monthly webinar. That's twice a month on Saturdays from 10:30 a.m. to 11 Eastern Time. We have a Tamil live talk show, and that's called Vili, which I'm told it means I. That show is on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time and Sundays at 8 a.m. Eastern Time for people who live outside Canada. We also conduct panel discussions. We host those. We're hosting those once a month. So please visit us to find out more about that. And please, we're looking for guests to join us on our shows. Again, we have an English version. We have a Tamil version. So if you want to share your journey in one of those languages, please join us. There are no limitations with gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. All walk of life are invited to participate. We want to hear your story. If you want to be a guest on any of our shows or willing to be a part of our organization and can help association or can help us directly or indirectly, please reach out to us. We'd love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, corporations, associations, even government officials can help us achieve our mission here at Voice of Men. And that is us. We are Voice of Men 360. I thank you for joining me today on Open Up. You can reach us through our phone number at 437-889-8329. You can email us at info@voiceofmen360.org. Our website address, of course, is www.voiceofmen360.org. And you can find us on all social media accounts. Again, we are Voice of Men 360. You Google us, you look for us on social media, you'll find us. But please visit our Facebook group. Again, facebook.com/groups/Voice of Men 360. And then if you're watching this on YouTube, or please visit our YouTube channel for more videos, Open Up or Vili. And like and subscribe there, please. For more information, please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and social media. We are Voice of Men 360. We want to reach out to more people and help more. Please continue your support. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm RJ Horner. Until next time, better days ahead.